our UN International Day of People with Disabilities. First of all, I have to mention that the Disability Advisory Council and the Ministry of Health welcomes you here. I'd love for the people on the council and everybody at the ministry to just give a wave so that everybody can acknowledge all of the effort that's gone into bringing us all here tonight. I'm so excited to be here tonight and recognize with you all as we celebrate the individuality and exceptional achievements of people in our community with disabilities. So on that note, I'm going to welcome our first speaker, the Honorable Kim Wilson, JP MP, Minister of Health.
Good evening, everyone. As the Minister of Health, who has direct responsibility for the Department for Aging and Disability Services, and we're joined by some of the staff members here, as well as I have the great privilege of being able to appoint the members of the the Disability Advisory Committee, who have produced a very, very wonderful book, but I'm sure they'll tell you a little bit about that in a few moments. So I'm so pleased to be able to be here this evening to join you as we recognize UN International Day of Persons with Disabilities. According to the United Nations, persons with disabilities make up an estimated 15% of the world's population. And globally, almost 1 in 5 persons living with disabilities encounter significant difficulties in their daily life. And this represents approximately 150 million people worldwide. In Bermuda, over 3,000 people are known to have a disability. And I actually had a chat a little while ago with our keynote speaker this evening, and we know that there are some challenges with respect to actually accurately reporting disabilities. But in any event, that is something that she will probably touch upon. Collectively, though, as a community, we must work together to empower persons with disabilities to become agents of change, as their involvement can help create opportunities for everyone. Local businesses also are encouraged to offer meaningful employment opportunities to persons with disabilities in an effort to afford them opportunities to make valuable contributions to our society. And in that same vein, I would like to thank the staff of Margaret Carter Center, KMCC, and the MWI's New Dimensions program for all that they do in providing support directly for persons with intellectual disabilities in our community through their day program services. KMCC's Training and Employment Division, for example, engages clients in meaningful work based on their skill level and the areas of interest as part of their community-based employment program. At present, a select group of clients work in various businesses across the island, while others carry out in-house contract work and receive stipends from local businesses for the completion of short-term projects. And in addition, over the last year, KMCC has partnered with MWI's New Dimension program for persons with intellectual disabilities to increase opportunities to clients and their families to enhance client development. Over the years, advancements in technology have made a significant impact on persons with disabilities, particularly by way of universal design, by making products and services that could be used by every and anyone living with or without a disability. But there's still much more work to be done. I urge everyone to help us to build an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable community. Today's important observation, the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, aims to increase awareness and promote the rights of persons with disabilities. These issues are as meaningful in Bermuda as they are in the larger jurisdictions, and as the well-being of affected individuals and their families is impacted in all spheres of society. This year, the Disability Advisory Council, or DAC, is marking this important observance by recognizing persons who have made a difference in their own lives and that of others despite being disabled. I look forward to shortly being able to personally congratulate the 5 Bermudians selected by DAC as today's awardees, recognized for their triumphant pursuits in overcoming barriers to participate in all aspects of society. And in closing, I am so incredibly pleased to be able to showcase the newly created booklet, which is in the back, I believe, A Guide to Benefits Available to Persons with Disabilities in Bermuda, which has been created by the Disability Advisory Council, and it details, for the first time ever, a comprehensive list of benefit entitlements for persons with disabilities and how to apply or inquire about them. This booklet can be found on the government website, also at www.gov.bm, and I thank the DAC board for putting together that very, very important document, and I'm certain that it will be utilized very well by everyone. So thank you, and thank you all.
Good evening, everyone. Lift up the mic. Is this one? Okay. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Tanae Ferbert. I also am one of the members on the Disability Advisory Council. So it's a pleasure to be here this evening. I did want to show the brochure that DAC did come up with. And we're very excited about this. It did take a lot of work, a lot of collaboration to get this brochure done. Everyone knows the meetings that we've had, trying to get everyone together to try to establish what benefits are already out there for persons with disabilities. And you'll be surprised that there are many benefits that already exist. So we're excited about this, and make sure that you do grab one. Hopefully we have enough on your way out this evening. So just wanted to share this with you. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker this evening. I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker this evening, and that is Lisa Reed. Born in a leap year on February 29th, Lisa Lister was diagnosed as a toddler with a rare neurological disorder. However, Lisa has never let her disability hold her back. From early, Lisa has challenged her abilities by participating in activities such as ballet, horseback riding, and cheerleading, and most recently scuba diving with a can-do spirit. In 2004, Lisa joined the civil service as a management consultant, and in March of 2010, she was promoted to serve as the executive officer of the Human Rights Commission. Lisa is accountable for the management and administration of the office and leads with a scrupulous regard for the facts and an uncompromising commitment to building a society that respects the inherent dignity of all persons, a community that is truly inclusive of all. Lisa has had a solid reputation in service, leadership, and as an activist for social justice. She has served as a director of the Big Brothers and Sisters, Friends of Dame Marjorie Bean, Hope Academy, and the Bermuda Underwater Exploration Institute. Further, she chaired the committee that produced Bermuda's National Policy on Disabilities. And for that, we are very grateful, because I know a lot of work went into that as well. Lisa is a Diamond Life member of the Bermuda Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and currently serves as the co-chair on the Social Action Committee. Lisa is the wife of Mr. Douglas Reed and the proud mother of 2 children, Jaylen, age 19, and Mia, age 17. If you please help me welcome Ms. Lisa Reed. We apologize in advance in regards to the acoustics that's happening downstairs. They might be practicing for the pantomime, maybe. Yeah.
Can I just test the mics? Can you hear me at the back? Can it be a little bit louder? Is that okay? So you can hear me? Okay. Good evening, Minister, colleagues, friends, and community members. I wish to thank the Disability Advisory Committee and the Department of Health for extending this invitation for me to speak. And thank you to Ms. Larita Cartwright for interpreting my remarks this evening. I thought about how I wanted to use this time, and to be perfectly honest, preparing for this speech has been an emotional undertaking for me. Obviously, I am here today as the Executive Officer of the Human Rights Commission and as the former Chair of the National Accessibility Advisory Council. However, I am much more than these two roles, and I am grateful for the opportunity to represent the fullness of myself here today. It requires to be more vulnerable than I might normally choose to be, but I feel the occasion warrants such an example. I am also a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sorority sister, a consumer, a customer, a citizen, an ally, and yes, I am also a person with a disability, a wheelchair user. Simply put, I am a member of the Bermuda community, deserving of equal treatment, opportunity, and representation, just like everyone else. In reflecting on the issue of accessibility, I've had to confront the reality of just how barbed and inhospitable the landscape really is for persons with disabilities. Even with the relative privilege and access that I recognize that I am afforded, thanks to being gainfully employed and having a supportive network around me. Like many of us, I am accustomed to operating on autopilot, accepting whatever comes. You see, when you have a disability, there can be limited alternatives available to adjust to circumstances encountered beyond whatever restricted systems one already may rely upon. It can be difficult to course correct or to make any major adjustment in one's environment beyond the day-to-day routine. It is only when faced with a crisis, as was the case with me earlier this year following my suffering a stress-induced TIA, that I allowed myself to reflect on just how many obstacles I am tasked with overcoming daily in order to function. That health scare really made me pause and take notice of the carefully constructed system I have in place, and to appreciate that it may only take one unanticipated scenario to knock me off guard and leave me unable to participate in what may have been a typical daily activity. This brings me to the theme for this year's commemoration of the United Nations designated International Day for Persons with Disabilities. The future is accessible. This theme should give us pause, so let us consider it. The future is accessible. It is a bold assertion projecting an aspirational vision for the future. And yet, the current state of affairs facing persons with disabilities in Bermuda makes me question the likelihood of such a lofty declaration ever becoming a reality. When is this future expected to manifest? Is it during my lifetime? The choices, decisions, policies, resistance, commitment, hesitation, apathy, or advocacy of today is what shapes tomorrow. Today's actions are the harbinger of the future. Can we all truly envision an accessible community without an excuse as to reason for any delay? An accessible community is one where obligations are met and best practice is sought and embraced to the point where everyone is considered and included. It is one where there exists a demonstrated commitment to preventing and removing physical or societal obstacles in order to promote equal rights and opportunity. Such a vision requires the collective responsibility of us all. I want to share something with you, and I quote, "Our vision for Bermuda is one of humanity, dignity, equality, self-determination, access, and inclusion for all members in our community." This was the stated vision submitted by the Committee for the National Policy on Disabilities of Bermuda in 2006, 13 years ago. The original committee was comprised of 19 individuals, and we were charged with providing recommendations for a national policy on disabilities. Following 2 years of research, consultation, and analysis, the final report was provided to the Minister of Health, who in turn tabled the report in May 2007, which was to serve as a roadmap for building a more inclusive, barrier-free, and accessible Bermuda. What was then called the National Accessibility Advisory Council still exists under the Disability Advisory Committee, called DAC, which is comprised entirely of volunteer experts. I would like to invite former and current members of this committee to please make themselves known by waving a hand or standing. I wish to thank you for your efforts, and thank you to those who are not present and also those who are no longer with us. It is important to acknowledge and honor the work that has already been done to progress the rights of persons with disabilities in support of an accessible future. It is easy to get swept up in new initiatives when what is missing is not necessarily more evidence, but rather the stewardship to follow through on what we already know to be pressing. The recommendations included in the national policy are as relevant today as they were in 2006, if not more. While there remains much work to be done to mobilize this commitment to an accessible future, I would like to highlight the most essential catalyst for building an inclusive and just Bermuda. The future will only be accessible if we have the will to make it so today and to take action today. So let us just think about something. Hurricane season just ended not too long ago. Consider what Bermuda looks like in the aftermath. The storm strikes. The island is covered in toppled trees. Driveways are blocked. Internet access is lost. And the sense of disconnection from each other prevails. But the buzz of chainsaws is swift, virtually immediate. Crews rally to support, to restore power. Neighbors assist neighbors. Emergency efforts are communicated on all forums. Our responsiveness is truly inspiring. These post-hurricane moments represent the best of us. Being disabled in Bermuda can often feel like all the downed trees have been left in your path. Communication remains disconnected. No one is coming with a chainsaw to assist. Sometimes people won't even acknowledge the metaphorical tree in your path. You might get a pat on the back or a look of pity, but no one is prepared to do the heavy lifting to clear the way. There is no urgency, no cohesive call for action. The obstacles remain, and there is no sign of collaborative assistance. The future is accessible will only become possible when we stop making excuses. We need to identify what is the arc that bridges our purported desire for an accessible and inclusive Bermuda with the commitment and hard work that is required to make it truly a reality. While overseeing a public authority like the Human Rights Commission, I can attest to the frustratingly circular nature of change. It is not uncommon to feel we are making one step forward and two steps back. Advancing one area inevitably highlights shortcomings in another. When the Bermuda Human Rights Act was enacted in 1981, there were a number of notable absences in the list of protected grounds. One such glaring omission was the ground of disability. In 1981, it was intentionally omitted. Out of concern for the potential cost implications associated with such protection from such prejudice and discrimination. The ground of disability was finally added to the Act in 1988. Still, the definition remained woefully insufficient and included protection for persons and excluded protection for persons with mental impairments. This remained unaddressed until 2018, following years of advocacy. The barriers that persons with disabilities encounter are found in far too many places and include limited access to education, poor health outcomes, lower levels of employment, inaccessible physical environments and transportation, the unavailability of assistive devices and technologies, gaps in service delivery, and discriminatory prejudice and stigma in society and financial insecurity. More often than not, this is not because of the disability, but rather it is because of the lack of access to services and support that lessen the impact of that disability. All of this compromises one's quality of life and that of family and caregivers. For those of us with disabilities, I invite you to share your story and your experience and hold both private and public sectors accountable. Allow yourself to acknowledge what needs to be done. What frustrates you? What gives you strength? What makes you feel supported? What gives you hope? Resistance to change and reluctance to disrupt the status quo is to be expected. However, our desire to create an accessible Bermuda must be greater. If the future is accessible, then the future starts now, and we all must play a role. To our leaders, we must model an accessible and inclusive environment for persons with disabilities, and additional resources and accountability must be considered to transform the national accessibility policy into further action. To the business community, examples of best practice in creating inclusive work environments abound. They're everywhere. Review your recruitment practices and policies, honor your obligations, and aspire to be an example for others in your industry. To employees, speak up about discriminatory practices and vocalize measures to improve your environment. As we turn our attention to this evening's honorees, I wish to encourage all persons with disabilities and those who advocate on their behalf. Nothing about us without us should remain a potent rallying cry in the creation of an inclusive future for persons with disabilities. And we must be swift, just like our collective responsiveness in the aftermath of a hurricane. Tonight's honorees reinforce that people's experience with living with their disability is unique and deeply personal. However, what the example of each of our honorees reflects is a shared spirit of resilience, risk-taking, and resourcefulness. The ability to persevere in the face of adversity, drawing deep from within one's soul to overcome doubt and do more than you imagined was even possible. As Mr. Harris stated in his video tribute, always remember that everything about you is special. Before I close, I would like to share a bit of one of my favorite sheroes, Helen Keller. Helen Keller is often lauded for her gentle optimism in the face of severe disability, but she was in fact decidedly assertive and a fierce justice advocate. She was what we would term today as a total badass. She called for revolution rather than reform. She had little patience for compromise and argued that, and I quote, charitable aid did more to assuage the guilt of the prosperous than to improve the conditions of vulnerable persons' lives. She said that nearly 100 years ago. Rather than asking for hope, she demanded action and equality. She called for rebellion against indifference, which, truth to be told, is what the inaction in support of accommodation requirements and adequate service delivery for persons with disability amounts to today. On the wall of my office is one of Helen Keller's quotes, and it can serve as a call to action for all in support of disability rights. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. With this in mind, I do believe we can imagine an inclusive future, and we might be able to say with confidence, the future is accessible because we must not settle for anything less.
Now the most exciting part of our night, we're moving on to recognize and celebrate all of our individual honorees. What one? This one. Brian Gibbons. Brian Gibbons broke his right leg in 9 places in a single vehicle motorcycle accident, which led to a below knee amputation. He's an avid athlete, and his big accomplishment, as many of you might know, is being selected as a winner of Best Bartender in Bermuda 3 times in a row. He currently bartends at Barracuda Grill. He makes a mean chocolate martini. Ryan's not here tonight, and so we're going to recognize him and hold his certificate for him in his absence. Everybody please give a round of applause to Ryan. Mariana Teixeira. Mariana was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 13 years ago, but that has not stopped her from raising 2 strong, driven, and independent thinking young women who call her mom. Jaylen Harris. In April 2015, Cheyenne fell 25 feet from a balcony onto a pile of rocks, and his chances of walking again looked slim. He'd broken his spine and his neck in 2 places. His words of advice for anyone that might be challenged with a disability are, I encourage you to practice gratitude and self-love every day. Welcome, Cheyenne.
I didn't really plan a speech this evening, but I just want to take this time to encourage again anyone that is here or listening to, again, just always keep that at the forefront. First, acknowledge God, and He will lead your steps in your way. And once you have that mindset, everything else will follow. I just would like to thank my mom, who's my caregiver, everyone in the community who has played a role in my recovery and continues to play a role in my recovery. And I'm just honored to be here tonight to be acknowledged and recognized. So thanks again.
I just also want to share that Shy One was recently in the Troika productions. I don't know if you got to see it, but please support persons with disabilities in the arts, and so that they can continue to be recognized.
Yes.
So.
Thank you. It's a 4-night show. I didn't think that I would be able to physically withstand, but it was a good 4 nights.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Go ahead, Brian.
Jason Miners. At 23, Jason was riding his bike when he impulsively hit the throttle. It's a decision he'll always regret. Before he knew it, he was flat on a sidewalk, his back broken. Doctors told him he would never walk again. 2 years ago, determined to have something positive come out of the tragedy, he put his pen to paper and started writing his story.
Pretty much, I just thank you all for this opportunity. I thank the Citizens of Cuba for calling me and us all together, something that I really didn't expect. And I'm just thankful, I'm humbled, I'm blessed, and I just thank you all for your support. I think also my caregivers are here, but I want to also give acknowledgement to my mom who is here tonight. Love you and thank you very much for everything.
And last but very not least, our very own Valerie Wade. Valerie was born with night blindness, which was not diagnosed until she was in her teens. Her ever-consuming desire is to educate the Bermuda public about the different conditions faced by those with vision impairment and seek to improve their sensitivity to the need for independence and the right to have equal opportunities and quality of life as everyone deserves. Valerie, thank you.
I just want to thank everybody here tonight. I've heard a message, and the message was, do you feel cheated or do you feel chosen? And I don't feel cheated, I feel chosen. And tonight I'm just here to represent those that have a disability, that there's a future ahead for us. We have to put our feet to the paddle and just continue on. And tonight I just want to stand up here, for I walk by faith and not by sight. And God is the author and finisher of my life. And without Him and with all, I think a lot of people in this room has had an impact in my life. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for coming tonight and sharing with us. And I like that. I like the future, our future is accessible. And I pray, I might not see it in this lifetime, but I just pray and hope that one day, everyone with disabilities will have a chance to be a real person in life, be treated like everybody else. Thank you.
By way of closing, we'd like to thank everybody for attending here tonight. I think an overarching theme tonight has been that there still do remain boundaries in place facing those in our community with disabilities. I think that facing discrimination and the obstacles that are in the way of people with disabilities in our community is the last civil rights frontier. I'd like to show everybody again the guide that was created by the Disability Advisory Council, a guide to benefits available to persons with disabilities in Bermuda. There is a lot going on in here, so please take a look. And there are very, very many people in this room I'd like to thank. Thank you to the Bermuda Society of Arts for opening their doors to us tonight. Thank you to the Minister, the Ministry of Health, and all of those at Aging and Disability Services, Kiona, Keith, Laura, for throwing in your hat and helping us get to where we are tonight. Thank you to Lisa Reed for being an outstanding speaker and showing up tonight with no qualms. And thank you to all of the wonderful members of the Disability Advisory Council. This guide was a lot of work, and everybody really put their head to task in getting us here tonight. And lastly but not least, thank you to everybody in this room for showing up, for showing that you care, for showing that this is an important issue, and that we can all come together to move in the right direction going forward. Please help yourself to food, please help yourself to the brochure, and please mingle.